Hiya David, great to receive some further footage from you, and also great to see some progress in regards to the overall movement. We'll look at it from face on first, and then I'll do a little look at the down the line footage. When we go down the line, I've got on the far right, on the bottom right, I've got some of your original footage that you sent across to me before we started working online, just so that you can see the improvements that you've made in your swing, because I think sometimes you see your swing on such a regular basis that you see the same habits, but you don't realise how much more diluted they are. And that's what we're seeing really here. We're seeing a better version of your original swing. There's still work to be done, but it's a much more diluted version of the swing we had previously, with all the issues that we discussed in your previous session. So continue to work on the pieces that we talked about in your first session. If we take a little look at it from face on, first of all, I like both setups. I think we've got the weight forward with both the upper and lower centre aligned on top of one another with the iron. So very little side bend away from the target. That's a great way of hitting the golf ball with negative loft. With driver, we've got the hips move forward more, so we've got a little bit of side bend, which is essential to bring the club out of its descent and launch the ball high with positive loft. And as I said before, here we're set up in a more appropriate manner to hit the ball with a slight descent, slightly negative loft, whilst we're hitting the ball off the turf. So I like what I'm seeing there. When we look at it from face on, swing wise, the axis is very stable. The left shoulder working down, left knee flexing forward, right knee straightening until about P3, and then we start to drift off. And then when we look at it from face on with the driver, we see the same sort of thing, just a little bit more exaggerated. So everything's pretty stable until we get to about P3, maybe P2.5, and then things start drifting off and the head starts to lift. So what we're seeing here, and you can see it actually on your driver, the forward bend that you've had at address is being maintained. And we've got a situation where the right hip is lower than the left. So our pelvic side bend is a little bit incorrect, quite a lot incorrect. We should have a situation where the right hip is slightly higher than the left. So we're maintaining the forward bend in our pelvis and our mid-spine, and we're doing the same here when we've got the iron in there. The upper body's sort of stretching out as much as it can, but the pelvis doesn't really extend as much as it needs to. That creates a situation where we just get that last little bit of lift. If we watch it from down the line here, takeaway is much better than it was, getting onto elbow play much later than we used to do, and then the arms, still that little bit of lift there. Rather than continuing to extend, turn and left tilt, from about P3 you hit the brakes on that and you start to lift the arms. So the arms lifting, whilst not as evident as it was before, so we had a much bigger lifting of the arms previously. So you can see you've made a good headway into improving that. I mean, the gap here beneath the arm is much reduced, but there is still a tendency to complete the backswing with a lifting of the arms. So what we need to try and do is get rid of this forward bend so that we sort of look more stacked up and down with the spine. The feeling would be, if you imagine that you were doing the Frosbury flop, you would move the spine this way more. I'm going to do a recap for a gentleman who visited me yesterday called Andy Cray, and we worked predominantly on improving this position during his swing. So I've actually got some footage of me demonstrating that drill with him and the feeling that he's got to have. And similar with yourself, we want to try and feel like we're going to propel the club as far as we can without the use of the arms. And what that requires you then to do is extend and left tilt more during the backswing. So we just need to get rid of or reduce this gap that we're seeing here, and we see it on both iron and we see it on driver. If you get this early today and you want to have a look at someone demonstrating these changes, if you go onto my channel and visit a guy called Mark O'Hara, and if you look at around about one of his last 2 lessons anyway, he's wearing a white top and a white bob cap. It was quite cold, so he's wearing a white top and a white cap, and he's working on the drill that you need to be working on. He's maxing out that Frosbury flop and the extension of the hips and the spine, so more work on extending the pelvis and the spine. In regards to it down the line, we're seeing that with both an iron and the driver, there's a marked improvement in the position of your arms in relation to your rib cage. There's still a little bit of a lifting of the arms above the plane line and a bit of separation from the body, brought about because when you get to P3, to continue to swing, you've got 2 options. You can either lift the arms, which is what you do, or you can continue to stretch the spine and the pelvis out and come into more extension. If you want to see someone doing that and pretty much maxing it out within stack and tilt, get some footage of Troy Mattison up and have a little look at how he does it. There's a lot of extension going on of both the hips and the upper spine. So pelvis and spine needs to extend more and for longer. So from P3 to P4, we want to be completing the swing with the extension of the pelvis and the spine rather than the lifting of the arms. Having said that, if we look at the position that you're now arriving in at the top, it's much improved. The right knee doesn't kick in quite as much and quite as aggressively as it used to. Still has a tendency to kick in, but nowhere near as aggressively. As we come through the hip, we've got a right heel that now isn't quite as up. Set that back to impact as it was previously. It's still up, but we've got right heel not quite as much up as it was. There's a little bit of a reduction of that, brought about through a little bit less of a flexing of the right knee as we're coming into the hitting area. So a little bit of a reduction in that right knee flex. A little bit better with an iron than it is with a driver, which you'd expect to see. The thing I really like here now is that the handle of the club doesn't raise as much and we don't hit out as excessively as we used to. The shaft's a little bit blurred, but you get the idea with where the hands are now. So your hands, rather than getting thrown above the plane line like they used to do, are tracing the arc much better through the golf ball. As a result, the hands are exiting just a little bit lower. Still need to go lower still, but there's still signs of the old swing in there. So you need to look at your previous lesson, keep working those pieces in, keep maxing the pieces out. But then we need to add this sort of change to how you complete your backswing. At the moment, you complete your backswing by lifting your arms because you don't get rid of this gap here enough by stretching the spine out more. If you learn to do that, you'll not move off the ball anywhere near as much, and you'll also be able to incorporate a much better leg action. You'll actually see things change in your downswing without you consciously working on them. So I'll send some, like I say, I'll get that sort of footage up of Andy who visited yesterday, but if you want to watch this drill being done to a very good standard, go to Mark O'Hara's recap. It's one of his last 2 lessons on his last 2 visits, one of his last 2 visits anyway, and he's wearing a white top and a white bob hat, and he'll show you exactly how to do that Frosbury flop drill to learn how to extend the spine and, more importantly for you, extend the pelvis. Good luck with it, and I look forward to watching things progress during 2014. Well done.